this test has been really well attended so far there, but there's a lot of discussion in the build-up to the game around ticket sales and high ticket prices. So it's really good to have a chat with the MCC Chief Executive, Guy Lavender. Good to see you, Guy. Lots going on. Were you surprised at the chatter about tickets and ticket prices, or is that something that you are always mindful of? I mean, 160 quid strikes one as being a lot of money to pay for one person to come to a test match.
Sure. Yeah, well, of course, I mean, I think we all need to be mindful of ticket pricing. And, of course, 160 is the top price tickets, but tickets are £45 as well for tests, and for under 16s, £20. So there's a whole price range. But, you know, we can't sort of dodge the fact that it's expensive to come to test match cricket, and that is in our minds. But I think the sort of headlines that Lord's was going to be empty, it's been rammed for the first 2 days. Very good crowd in today, almost full. So we're a bit surprised, I think, by the headlines, but I think the sentiment is a fair one. We've got to make sure that cricket's affordable. And I think we do that through not just Test match cricket, but all the other matches that we stage here, whether it's the 100 or T20 Blast. And so there has to be a range. But, you know, I think what's very clear is that the appetite for Test match cricket at Lord's is exceptionally strong, as you've seen for the last few days.
Yeah, I mean, I presume you'll say, well, look, people are still paying it. So it's supply and demand, isn't it? And that's the price. And
well, I think it's a bit more nuanced than that. I mean, you've got to have different price points to bring different audiences in, and you just don't want the people that can afford £160. So, you know, that's why we have a sort of variable price model across the ground, and we try and get different groups in. We've got lots of community groups in, NHS groups. We did offers to schools. So we try and get this balance right. And I think you get a flavour of that if you walk round the ground. It's a diverse audience, particularly in terms of sort of socioeconomics, and I think you can see that when you walk round. So, but the point is a relatively fair one. The cost of living is going up.
Yes.
We know that life is tough for lots of people, and you've got to get the balance right between running a sort of commercial business to fund the great developments that we're doing in these stands and what we do next, but also making sure that people feel that they can afford to come. And we run a ballot to sort of try and make that process as fair as we can.
Well, I was going to ask you about that because fortunately I don't have to buy a ticket, but if I were to try and buy a ticket to come to a Lord's Test match, how easy is it actually to actually buy a ticket and to come?
Well, demand, you know, outstrips supply in that sense. So the fairest way to do it is a ballot program, which is what we do, and we get tens of thousands of applicants for tickets, and we put them through a ballot, and then we offer tickets on that basis. So in that sense, it's fair, but again, it's slightly constrained by size of the ground and capacity. So, you know, tickets are available, and of course, once you've done the ballot, where a lot of the lower price tickets are sold, you then got top tier price tickets, which people have to decide whether they want to buy them or not.
Yes.
So the big issue, I guess, for us is we start this planning cycle quite a long way out from the year. I mean, we're sort of talking about pricing really in the sort of in the summer before, as we start to work through, and a lot changes, doesn't it, in life over the last few months. So we've got to do another exercise, I think, this year, and just make sure that our pricing is right, not just, I guess, for tickets, but of all the other things that are in Lord's, and you know, we try and get that balance right as well.
It needs to be accessible, doesn't it? I was just doing something actually with your media people here, and I sat in that grandstand aged 11, the first cricket match I'd ever seen. It was a Gillette Cup final. I sat there with my dad, and I watched Peter Lever bowling from this end in the Gillette Cup final against Kent, and I said to my dad, that's who I want to be. Yeah. And it's not just about getting the high rollers in, it's about getting kids in, because that's the moment that lit the spark for me, was sitting over there and watching it, and with the atmosphere and everything else about Lord's, sort of the magic of the place. All that, I'm sure, played a part in that. Yeah, it really did. And you know, a friend of mine bought his kids and some of their friends for the first day, having never been to Lord's before. They're all avid cricket players, and of course, it was a magical day. They talked about it all the way in the drive back to Devon.
it's a day they'll never forget. So we've got to create those opportunities. And I think both for Test match cricket, but of course the game has changed. And, the short format of the game, if you come to those here, whether it's the 100 or T20 Blast, is a very young audience. So there are lots of different points, I think. But I think we entirely accept the point that Test match cricket at Lords is something that has to be accessible to lots of different
for everyone.
people. It really is.
Yeah, and I mean, it's the Ashes next year. You're not going to bring the prices down for that, presumably. There'll be a huge demand, won't there?
Well, I think we've got to look at it, and I think you can get the balance right. And again, you as a chief executive are always sort of juggling these different plates of driving a commercial business to maximise your revenues and reinvest in cricket and the MCC Foundation, all the other things we're doing, but also make it accessible. So it's just getting those things in balance and responding and reacting to what's going on around the world, which we're very keen to do.
Yeah. I must talk Jubilee, obviously, with you. I mean, did you worry about staging this Test match during that? I mean, for all sorts of reasons, really. But the nation is out there, a lot of the nation celebrating this. Did you wonder that people wouldn't come, or was it even right to stage such an event with that going on?
Well, I think the first point to say is that the Queen is our patron, so it's a great honour to be staging an England Test match during the Jubilee celebration. So it is absolutely wonderful. But of course, I think when we looked at the fixture, we always thought that there's going to be a lot going on. And when we talk about ticket pricing, I think where attendances have been perhaps slightly down on the past, it's not price related. It's the fact that there's an incredible amount of celebrations and going on around the country. So that, I guess, was in our minds, and we also knew that sort of London is going to be very busy. There's lots of events going on, and we know that there are issues around sort of staffing availability. We have about 1,400 workforce on site every day.
Every day, wow.
So you've got to find those a workforce in a market where there's lots happening. So we always knew it was going to be slightly different for this test, and I think that's borne out if you look at our sales in particular for the India ODI in South Africa. They're back to where they were before. So, but it's a great honour and wonderful to play our part. And we've
what
really
have you
enjoyed
done?
it.
What's
We've
been
had
going
all
on?
sorts of things. We did a big sort of 70 on the pitch with local school children and community groups before the match. We've got a big Union Jack up on top of the media centre where we are now. We planted a commemorative tree in the Coronation Gardens earlier on during the course of the match, and we've sort of themed the flowers and food and beverage offering around the ground to mark that. And then tomorrow we've got a big Jubilee lunch with a community. We've got 250 local community groups with a sort of big celebration. So it's great and great to play even a small part.
You could do the game going on then, couldn't you?
I really could.
Yeah, well, that must be a chief executive's nightmare, because if it does end today, you've got to handle that money back. Yeah,
so I think we spend quite a lot of time thinking about what's coming next, almost after every session when we get to this point. The one thing that I do think for me particularly, it's when you're hosting these events, it's your desire is not so much about the money. It's just that you're delivering a great experience that people want to enjoy. And so our disappointment really is if you haven't got a great day or a full day for everyone that's paid to come along and watch it. That's the real bit. It's like having a party at home. You want everyone to turn up, have a good time. Then you sort of want them to go home at the end. But that's the real issue. So we've just got to plan and see what happens in this session now, and we will go from there. But I think it's always on our minds this time of the day.
I had an Afghanistani taxi driver this morning. It was raining, so I didn't walk to Lords this morning. And he was very animated about cricket, which was great. He was a young man who left Afghanistan a couple of years ago, essentially when the Taliban moved in again. And he got us talking about cricket and his developed love of the game. And I took it back to Robin Marlowe, who of course for the MCC when he was president really began that push for cricket in Afghanistan, which the MCC is continuing now. And he did paint quite a sad picture really of what life is becoming there in Afghanistan again, and particularly for women. Given the connection that MCC has, how do you see that playing out? I mean, is there any way forward? Can you see Afghanistan cricket being played while the Taliban is there?
Well, it's an incredibly difficult situation, and I spent some time in Afghanistan as a soldier in a previous life, and Dr. Sarah Fain, who runs the MCC Foundation, of course, ran Afghan connections with the MCC very successfully over many years, and we continually look to think about, well, what can we do in Afghanistan, and the answer at the moment is very little. We've done some brilliant work here in supporting Afghan refugees who have been accommodated in London and use the indoor school to play cricket and support those. And in fact, that won the Tessa Jal Community Sports Awards at the Industry Sports Awards most recently. But we can do some stuff in the UK. It's very difficult to do any interventions in Afghanistan at the moment, but hopefully that might change as things become more stable. But it's difficult.
I know the ICC and the international isn't necessarily what you have to do with too much, but you'll have some input and know what's going on. I mean, do you think that what is happening in Afghanistan does jeopardise their short-term future, at least as international cricket nation?
I do.
Men and women.
I do, because I think the whole strategic situation has changed, and the ability of teams to play, particularly for female teams, has changed. But I think it's a really difficult balance to get right, isn't it? You don't want to sort of shut the door on the development that's take place. Having been in Afghanistan, cricket's such a part of life. And you don't want to close that door. You want to see teams develop and draw, and draw out the best talent. And it's certainly there in Afghanistan. But it's a really, really challenging situation.
The advances that they've made, from nothing really. When Robin first went over there in the mid-90s, I guess when he was president here.
No, absolutely,
it's such a short time.
Yeah. It really is.
What else have we got to talk about? We've got Eton and Harrow now, and Oxford and Cambridge talking about diversity and inclusivity. Was there an uproar about it? I don't know. I mean, my old colleague Henry Blofeld said he's going to quit the MCC if those games are cancelled. What do you think most people feel about Eton and Harrow matches not being played here anymore, or the varsity match?
Well, I think there's a range of views, and there's no doubt that there are a lot of MCC members who are angry that we want to move away from the annual fixtures. But again, I think the flip side to that is there will be many who see the logic. We're inevitably constrained by the number of fixtures we can play. That sort of is dictated by the amount of matches. We play more matches here probably than any other ground, and therefore, if you restricted in numbers, then you have to make choices. And our desire is to move from those annual fixtures for Eton Harrow and Oxford and Cambridge to a National Schools Cup for under 18s and a university competition where the best schools and the best universities, based on talent, have the opportunity to play at Lords. And that the logic of that is difficult to argue against. And I think the fact of the matter is we may play those fixtures again at some point in the future or for special occasions, but we just won't play them annually. But it's a big issue. It's
history and tradition, isn't it?
It's history and tradition. Yeah. It is, and that's this is where I think, particularly with MCC, we're sort of trying to get this balance right. But for us, this isn't about following any particular agenda. It's just effectively saying, how do we create the most opportunities for both men and women, boys and girls, to play at Lords, and on what basis? And we're just trying to work that through. So it's a contentious issue.
You might have Henry's tie in the post.
I hope not. If he's listening, I definitely hope not. Because I've said many times, I'm very proud of our club. It does get a bit of a kicking relatively regularly, but actually
not as much as it did, I don't think.
No. I mean, we're trying to do the right things, and of course, you've got a very broad spectrum of members, but united by a love of cricket, particularly having opportunities for young people to play and develop a love of the game. So that's really what we're trying to do and what we're about.
Yeah. Great stuff. Guys, lovely to see you. Thanks for coming. I do hope you get, not just some cricket tomorrow, but an England victory tomorrow with your lunch and everything else.
That would be wonderful.
That'd be great. But thanks for coming and talking about the tickets, and we'll be keeping an eye on how those prices come down for.
You can ask me next year.
I will do. Okay, thanks for coming.
Thanks a lot.
Cheers, Guy. There we go. Lots of interesting things in there. Guy Lavender, the Chief Exec here at MCC.